Hello, everyone. Welcome, and thank you for joining us for A Greener You for 2022 with the Glen Ellyn Environmental Commission. If you have any questions or comments, we would love to hear from you. We're going to save about 10 minutes at the end of the evening for that, and you can just drop those questions in the chat at any time. We're joined tonight by Jacqueline Casaza, Barbara Kwiatkowski, and Christy Truitt. So if you'd like to take it away, let's get started.
Thanks so much, Brenna, and thanks everyone for joining. We're very excited to share this presentation with you tonight. I'm going to go ahead and start sharing my screen. So we've got a ton of great information, and we want to get to it all. So I'm going to go ahead and get started. Oops. I can get my slides going here. Okay, so I'm just going to take a couple minutes to talk about who and what is the Glen Ellyn Environmental Commission. Hopefully you know that we have an environmental commission here in Glen Ellyn, but if not, I'll tell you a little bit more about our role. Then we'll jump into kind of the bulk of the presentation, which is healthy habits for you and the planet. We'll also share a few tips to help you keep your resolutions. And then, as Brenna said, we'll allow about 10 minutes at the end for questions. So as questions come up, please feel free to put them in the chat, and then we'll address them all at the end. You don't have to hold on to your thoughts until the end of the presentation. All right, so we're going to go ahead and get started. So what is the Glen Ellyn Environmental Commission? We're kind of, I like to think of us as like a subcommittee of the village government, but we're one of the additional commissions that works along with the village board, and we provide recommendations on topics that have to do with the health and welfare and safety of Glen Ellyn residents and our natural resources. So we have a lot of fantastic natural resources in our community. As we're all well aware, we have our beloved trees, we have our beloved parks like Churchill Woods and the Prairie Path and the Glacial Ridge Trail, Lake Ellyn, which I've seen people ice skating on. Glen Ellyn's really a very special place. So we work to share information out about that, both to residents and also, like I said, to the board. So we meet once a month. Typically it's the third Tuesday of the month at the Civic Center. So feel free to come by one of our meetings if you like. They're usually quite spirited, lots of great ideas that we like to share. But we meet once a month, and then we also sponsor events throughout the year. So some of the events we sponsor that you might be familiar with, one is our recycling extravaganza. We partner with COD and other local organizations to help residents recycle items that can't be picked up at the curb, but we still want to try to keep them out of the landfill. So we just held this back in September, and some of the things that we helped to get recycled were styrofoam, paint, light bulbs, bicycles. We did paper shredding and books as well. So we'll be doing another one of those this spring. So please look out for that. In the past, we've also sponsored a sustainable yard and garden tours where we take residents around Glen Ellyn and show them homes and also local gardens like at Village Green that have native plants. These are plants that are not only good for your property because they help to store groundwater, and they don't require a lot of maintenance, which I always love about plants, but they're also very good for the environment as well. So those are some of the events that we do. And then we also partner quite regularly with local organizations like the Glen Ellyn Park District and the Conservation Foundation to host educational events and the library, like the event we're doing tonight. So again, we like to share information out and help connect residents to environmental resources through things like our native tree and shrub sale that we did with the Glen Ellyn Park District. One of the other things that the Environmental Commission is tasked with is help keep village resources about environmental information up to date. So some of the biggest ones are about recycling and curbside composting. If you go to the village website, the best way to find this with all the links on the village website, if you just go to the main page, Village of Glen Ellyn, and scroll all the way to the bottom. There's a big blue button that says refuse and recycling. And if you click on that, that takes you to the refuse and recycling page where it will have all the other links that you need. We also, so we work to keep that up to date. We also share information about other ongoing green initiatives. Like right now there's holiday light recycling that goes until January 31st. So if you have broken light bulbs from your holidays, please drop those off at Main Street Rec. There's also information on that page for recycling, again, items that cannot be collected at the curb, but that can be recycled throughout DuPage County, things like batteries, light bulbs, textiles. We're going to talk more about that during the presentation. So just bookmark that page and go back to it from time to time. It has a lot of great information on it. So before we get into the healthy habits, I'm going to give a further plug for the recycling information that is on the village website. Some of the commission members were fortunate enough to go to the Groot, they're our curbside hauler, go to the Groot recycling facility a couple years ago, and we saw where all of our recycling goes. So I can assure you that as much of the items that we try to recycle as residents at the curb are recycled, but there are a few rules that Groot has really asked us to follow. And the #1 rule is to not put your recyclables in plastic bags. If you have to bag them, please put them in a paper bag, or better yet, don't bag them at all. If you put your recyclables in a plastic bag, they will go straight to the landfill. There's no one to cut it open and sort it. There's no one to empty it out. So please make sure to not do that. The things that we recycle in Glen Ellyn are, as you can see from the graphic, metal cans, so aluminum, steel, tin, glass bottles and jars, not broken glass, like regular glass bottles and jars, dry paper and cardboard, and then plastic, which I like to tell people, think about plastic bottles, jugs, and tubs, like household items, not plastic hangers, not plastic toys, not plastic bags. Just because it's made out of plastic doesn't mean that it's recyclable. So this little graphic is on the village website. Hopefully that gives you a little bit more information about what can go at the curb. And we'll talk more about all the things that cannot go at the curb and where you can find them. All right, so now we're going to get into the presentation, which is healthy habits for you and the planet for 2022. So January is a time when many of us like to set goals and resolutions, myself included. But sometimes, you know, as our good friend Kermit the Frog says, it's not easy being green. You know, it's hard. There's so much information out there about the environment and the planet and what to do. So tonight's presentation is going to help with that, because we're taking things that are good for you and good for the planet and putting them together. So hopefully you can find something on here that will inspire you to make a small change. And then, you know, all those small changes add up and it makes it a little easier for us to be green. So we're taking 5 of the most popular New Year's resolutions and putting a little environmental spin on them. So we're going to talk about eating healthier with plant-based diets. We're going to talk about exercising more by including nature in your fitness routines. We're going to talk about volunteering in the community with some environmental organizations that you may or may not know about. We're going to talk about how you can organize and declutter your home and keep those items out of the landfill. I'm excited for that because that is on my 2020 resolutions list of decluttering. And then finally, always popular, we're going to talk about how you can save money by reusing items in your own home and also borrowing and resourcing items from within the community. All right, so the first one I'm going to talk about is eating healthier by trying a plant-based diet some or all of the time. I love this one because actually my husband and I did this last January. We decided to do a vegetarian January and he was quite skeptical. I think he thought we were going to be eating like bean sprouts and cucumbers for the entire month, but we actually we tried a number of new fruits and vegetables, and we learned a lot of new recipes. And I think he was really surprised that everything tasted pretty good. For the most part, our kids ate it, and we found a lot of good new recipes that we liked as a family. So I've been through it. I live to tell the tale. For the most part, I'm a flexitarian, which means I eat mostly vegetables, but I still eat the most delicious meats like bacon and things like that. I have not been able to get out of my diet yet. So why do humans want to consider a plant-based diet? I mean, we've been hearing from the time we were kids, it's always good to eat lots of fruits and veggies. But vegetarians, compared to meat eaters, they eat less saturated fat and cholesterol, and they eat more vitamins, fiber, folic acid, minerals, and something called phytochemicals, which phytochemicals is kind of just a fancy word for a compound that's found in plants. What is so special about phytochemicals is that they are thought to help reduce risk of cancer. And they're exclusively from plants. So veggies, fruits, grains, legumes, that's where they come from. The one that's most common, or one of the ones that's common that I came across that people probably know about, is beta carotene. And there's lots of different ones found in different plants. You don't need to know what they all are. If you're eating a variety of fruits and veggies, then you'll be getting, all of those different phytochemicals. Additionally, by eating a plant-based diet, vegetarians compared to meat eaters will have lower cholesterol, lower blood pressure, and a lower body mass index. And all of those things are associated with a lower risk of chronic disease and greater longevity. So lots of good reasons for humans to consider eating plants. All right, what about the planet? It's also very good for the planet, other than the obvious reason that we're not eating all the animals, but it's very good for the planet as well for us to consider a plant-based diet. So meat and dairy production is a very energy intense process. It uses a number of resources. So it uses 83% of all farmland that's available globally. And it produces 60% of agriculture's greenhouse gas emissions. So when I first thought about this, I think, we hear about emissions from agriculture. A lot of people just think, oh, that's the cows and the methane from the cows. But it's not just the cow farts. And I'm sure my boys will be very excited that I just used the word cow farts in a library presentation. It's not just about that. It's also about all the water that's used to grow the crops to feed these animals, all the forests and natural areas that are cut down for them to graze on. So it's a very energy intense process. And also, wild areas that have been cut down and converted to farmland is driving a massive loss of wildlife on our planet. In fact, at this point, 96% of all land animals are either livestock or humans, and mostly livestock. So that was something I found out that just really blew my mind. And you might question, we have a huge population in the world. How would we be able to feed everybody if we didn't have meat and dairy consumption? Well, even if we did not have meat and dairy consumption, we could reduce the global farmland that's used by more than 75%. It's the size of I think it's like the US, China, Russia, Brazil, combined, Australia combined, and still be able to feed the world. A lot of the developing world eats, more plants than the developed world. It's usually the higher income countries, the more meat and dairy that they consume. All right, so those are all the reasons why you might want to consider eating plants, because it's good for you, it's good for the planet. But where do you start? There's a lot of information out there. So some plant-based diets you can try. There's the semi-vegetarian or flexitarian, which is you eat a lot of veggies, you eat meat kind of more sparingly. Pescatarian is someone who would eat fish. A vegetarian would be someone who eats dairy products, but no meat or no fish. and then vegan, which is no animal products at all. So I like to say it doesn't have to have a name. You can be an imperfect vegetarian. It's better for us to have a village or 30,000 people in Glen Ellyn that are imperfect vegetarians than 100 vegans, because it's our collective, that we as a group would eat less meat and dairy than a few people doing it perfectly. It'll have more of a collective impact. So you can think about it. Here are some tips to get started. I love this quote from Michael Pollan. I think this is a great diet to follow. Eat food, not too much, and mostly plants. So keep that in mind. Some tips to get started. Eat lots of veggies and not just as a side dish. Like I said, I think my husband thought that we were going to just be eating boring, vegetables every night. And we actually had a lot of fun adding it to pastas and soups and stir fries and things like that. Salads get boring. I hate eating salads in the winter because it's too cold for me to eat salads. So again, you don't have to just be a vegetarian who eats salad. There's lots of creative ways that you can get your veggies. I just had soup and I just threw spinach like right into the top of my soup, which I liked because I didn't have to do any additional cooking. I just added it right on top. But there's tons of websites out there, Google or Pinterest, anything. There's plenty of resources. You can rethink meat as a garnish instead of as the main dish. So instead of having, for example, like a chicken breast and like a side of vegetables, you could create like a veggie bowl and add chicken to the top. A lot of people like to do Meatless Mondays, or you can designate another day of the week that you would choose to not have meat, and then perhaps make that recipe, every week. That's what your family has for the non-meat day. So one that we did a lot in my house was we did noodles and roasted cauliflower with pesto, super easy, and everybody liked it. And then when you do eat meat, consider supporting family farms and local producers where possible. Not only are you supporting, again, like local businesses in the Illinois area, but that meat is going to be fresher because it's traveling less of a distance to get to you. And they'll, have hopefully some better quality and choice that you'll be able to access. So that is some ideas on plant-based diets. So along with eating healthier, people like to combine eat healthy and exercise. Those are two big ones always to start the year. So instead of just exercising more, we're gonna suggest that you incorporate nature into your exercise routine. So this was something that I really started doing actually when the pandemic started, because the gym closed. So all of a sudden I went from someone who ran every once in a while to someone who ran all the time outside, because it was the only thing I was able to do. So exercising outside provides, of course, better access to fresh air and sunshine, which is good for vitamin D. Vitamin D helps us build strong bones, but it also is thought to help regulate our immune system, which is of top of mind for everyone, I think, right now. Just viewing green spaces has been shown to boost your mood. So, you don't even have to, exercise, of course, has a lot of physical benefits, but mental benefits are also a huge benefit of exercise. In fact, the New York Times put out an article just today that talked about how people who exercise regularly are shown to have less anxiety. So just looking at trees and green spaces can increase your mood. Smelling pine trees has been shown to reduce inflammation. So I'm not even talking about vigorous exercise. You can just spend 20 minutes in a park not exercising, and that's been shown to improve your mental well-being. So it can really be anything you want, just trying to think about doing it outdoors. And another benefit is that it's can be less expensive if you're doing it outside, and it can be done just about anywhere. So like I said, I got very into running. This is a picture of me out running in nature in Michigan. Why is it good for the planet when we spend more time outside? Well, spending more time outdoors gives us a greater appreciation for our natural environments, and that makes us more likely to care for them. In fact, the Shed Aquarium just announced that they're doing a $500 million renovation, and part of the reason behind that is to make it more immersive, make nature more accessible, feel more tangible to visitors. And the CEO, Bridget Coughlin, said that people don't care about, or people won't conserve what they don't care about. So, you know, they have a vision to make nature more accessible to people, which will make people care. And then, of course, when you exercise outdoors or at home, you can help reduce your carbon footprint because you're not driving to or from the gym. You're not using, you know, equipment or that needs power. And a lot of this, again, it can just be simply taking a walk outside. Okay, so we have a ton of local resources near us that offer a lot of nature-based programs. So of course you can walk any time of year. We're so lucky to have the Prairie Path in Glen Ellyn. And we also have, which, you know, the Prairie Path right now is covered with ice. So if you're going there, please walk with caution. But we also have Lake Ellen and other beautiful trails around Ackerman and at Churchill that are wonderful for walking. The Glen Ellyn Park District and the Morton Arboretum offer forest therapy walks on a periodic basis. That's actually not like a vigorous exercise. It's more kind of slow, mindful walking, really taking time to immerse yourself in nature and experience it with all your senses. It's a really nice practice. If you've never tried it, I highly recommend it. You can do something just about every day with the DuPage County Forest Preserve. If you visit their website, things from visiting a farm to taking a hike, to picking up trash and helping to restore native areas. They have lots of things you can do outside in nature. One thing that's really exploded in popularity since the pandemic is all these virtual walking or running challenges. And those are always fun because usually there's some kind of cool swag you can get with this. You can get a t-shirt or a medal. I signed up for a Harry Potter one with my family and we all got wands. So those can always be like a fun motivator. The Conservation Foundation had a challenge in 2021 called the Take a Hike Challenge. And they were giving out swag. If you completed 6 hikes, they gave you a walking stick and a medallion. So the opportunity to earn the swag is over, but the hikes are still up on their website. So you can visit their website to find the hikes. They're all in our area. And then you can be notified about hikes that will be taking place in 2022. And then a couple ideas that are family friendly is there is a challenge called 1,000 hours outside for families. And the idea behind that is that, you know, it's hard for us to get our families out into nature because we don't think we have time. But the average child spends 1,200 hours a year on screens. So the time is there. It's just kind of a matter of shifting your priorities. So that's something that we're going to try in my house. This year, we're not doing a good job so far, but still have the rest of 22 to work on that. And then last but not least, if you have a 4th grader or if you have a 2nd or 3rd grader, put this on your calendar. The Every Kid Outdoors program offers free national parks passes for 4th graders and their families that are good for a year. So the program runs August to August. But if you want a reason to or want an excuse to go visit national parks and you have a child that's that age, it's a fantastic program and a really great opportunity. All right, so that's a lot of organizations that are in our area that have all this these great activities. And Barbara is going to talk a little bit more about volunteering with some of these organizations or other organizations that you're interested in. So Barbara.
Thank you. I can tell you that, pertinent to your last slide, nothing gets you out exercising more than owning a dog, because the dog always wants to go out for a walk, is always up for it, and makes it so much more fun. You meet other dogs, and every day of the year is an opportunity to take your dog out for a walk. So that is my exercise habit. Another habit that we are looking at is volunteering in the community. The benefits to you, they improve your physical and mental health, it reduces stress, you get to meet new people, learn new things, and do good for your community and the planet. There was a report from the US Bureau of Labor Statistics that said around 25% of Americans spend 1 hour per year volunteering. Now we have a population of 330 million, so that's 82,500,000 hours, or 40,000 people working full time. And that sounds like a lot. However, that also means that 3 out of 4 of us are not volunteering. So there is a great opportunity to volunteer in our community. Next slide, please. Thank you. Consider the potential benefits to you, but the benefits to the planet and the community. And a lot of people don't volunteer because they don't know what organization to volunteer to, what their interests are, what is that going to look like, how much time it's going to take. I think you can volunteer for as little or as much as you can. All the organizations that we will have listed will take volunteers. There's also you can Google a lot of organizations. There are organizations there that can match you up with your interests. Volunteermatch.org, for example, or other ones that if you just don't know where to start, ask a friend, ask somebody you work with, maybe in a store. There's just a million opportunities to volunteer, especially in the Glen Ellyn community. As I found out, I'm a new transplant to Glen Ellyn. I've only been here less than 2 years, but I certainly found many opportunities to volunteer and get to know my community and new people. Next, please. Thank you. As Jacqueline reported, the Glen Ellyn Park District has a lot of opportunities. They have a lot of activities, whether they are ongoing or events that you can volunteer. So if you don't have a lot of time, but you can volunteer for an event, that would be very much appreciated. They also have the restoration days that are every month. DuPage, however, does it every weekend. I like the one about picking trash up on Monday. So as I take my dog for a walk, certainly on Mondays, I see the route come around and pick up all our garbage, and I see a lot of it end up on the street. It's a good opportunity to pick up some pieces. I also have a neighbor who just regularly goes out running and walking. Every day she comes back with at least 5 pieces of trash. And that's not only here, it's on vacation, it's everywhere. So it's just a habit that she got into, and I think it's a great habit. So I picked that up from her, and I'm trying to do that as well. We're listing a short list here of organizations that look for volunteers, and pick one that is meaningful to you. You can look them all up on their websites and see what they do and see what catches your interest. And some of these are long established organizations, and other ones are seedlings, as we're calling them. And if you don't find something that interests you, start your own organization. Get 2 or 3 people together and start an activity. Next one. So, as Jacqueline said in the beginning, and Kermit, our sage Kermit said, it is not easy being green. It is also not easy to declutter and organize. We all have stuff, and we all buy stuff. And then what do we do with all that stuff? So pre-cycling was kind of a new term for me. Like, what does that mean? What's pre-cycling? Well, consider the life of the product. How long is that product going to last? what is going to happen to it once you're done with it? Is it just going to end up in your closet? Is it going to end up in a landfill? Is it going to be reused by somebody? Take that in mind. Just give it a thought when you're buying your stuff as to where it will end up. There was a story on NPR last week on holiday shopping, not just holiday shopping, but holiday shopping returns. It appeared that in 2021, US shoppers spent $4.4 trillion buying our stuff. $500 billion, 500 billion was returned. So what happens to all that stuff? A lot of it ends up in landfills. Unfortunately, the statistic was 6 billion pounds end up in landfill because the suppliers and manufacturers can't reuse some of the stuff that you bought, either because it doesn't make any financial sense. Sometimes they even tell you to just keep it. So now you're stuck with this thing that you wanted to return and you don't want. So now what happens to it? Electronics and some things, certainly the higher end and higher cost items, they can maybe resell. But the majority of the items, and especially if you put something together and it didn't work, now you try to repackage it and send it back, they just do not have the resources to go through and put that back together and resell it. So they chuck it. So that ends up, that's part of that 6 billion pounds of landfill. So that was like a mind-blowing statistic when I heard that. So considering the life of the product, I think, keeps you very focused when you're making a purchasing decision, and also when you're throwing out your trash. Next one, please. As we know, a lot of our trash ends up in the environment. You're walking your dog, or you're running down the prairie path, and there's the plastic bag that's caught on a tree, or there are pop cans or plastic tops all over the place. I heard a story that, and I was doing this, and it just caught me off guard that, when you floss and you flush it down the toilet or down the sink or whatever, ends up in the waterways. And they were showing pictures of marine life just covered in floss, and it was just devastating. So of course I don't do that anymore. It's one of these things that you don't think about, and then you see something like, oh my God, I'm doing that. Let's stop that. So there's a lot of Glen Ellyn, fortunately, has a lot of programs that can help you with the recycling. Composting is another huge issue to face because of the methane emissions. They're more potent than CO2, and Glen Ellyn has a great composting program. It is also on their website. Right, you follow the path that Jacqueline said, and then you just click on curbside composting, and they have all the information. I accidentally started composting. I hadn't intended to, but my new neighbor in my new neighborhood, which I'm loving, gave me free her compost bin because it was too small for her, but it was just the right size for me. So that is how I started my compost. So again, there's another term, wish cycling, and the reason we mentioned that is, and the reason we're really talking a lot about what is recycled and what is not, is you think, oh well, this is plastic, or this is paper, or this is this, or this is that, and I'll just put it in the recycling because it's recyclable. The list is actually much smaller than one thinks, and so when putting it in the recycling, and if you're not sure, the saying goes, if in doubt, throw it out. Don't recycle it, because it will end up in the landfill, and it just kind of stopgaps the whole recycling process. Obviously, when you're looking at your house and you want to declutter and organize, if you're an HGTV or any of those watch any of those shows, you have your pile well, we're going to keep this, we're going to recycle that, we're going to sell this, we're going to donate that, which is great because then it organizes you to start with. And you know, I always like to start in, and my husband is a pack rat, so we have to start it together. And I have to put the piles for him, and then we decide together what to do with them. That's the only way I can get him to do it, but it works. But if you start with a drawer, if you start with a closet, or if you start with a room, just to get you started into that mode, it really goes a long way. But again, if you're going to throw it in the recycling, then please make sure to check the content and that it's the right thing to throw out. There are a lot of organizations, some of which we have talked about. I found that the DuPage County website also has a huge list of companies that either recycle or stores that take product back, like batteries, light bulbs, paint, things like that. Of course, the Glen Ellyn Environmental Committee sponsors the recycling extravaganza, which I was fortunate to participate in this last year. And I was just blown away by the amount of participation, which was great. And the one that really blew me away was the styrofoam. That was the busiest stop. Now you would think it would be, you know, other things. No, people were coming up to that stop with SUVs. They would open their back door and just full of styrofoam that they had saved over the year, because they knew that the extravaganza was going to happen at some point and they could bring it in and recycle it. That's a really difficult product to recycle. So that was a good stop for them, and a great vendor at the extravaganza. The another one of the other stores that's not listed here, but I have used personally, is the Restore in Addison. That's the Habitat for Humanity. We moved here and we remodeled our house. We also did landscaping, and we had all of this stuff from the landscaping I just could not use and didn't know what to do with it. So the stones that we couldn't use, I put out on the front curb. The pavers that I couldn't use, we donated to the Restore, and they were just, it was kind of an unusual item, and they were just so delighted to get it. So as I said, some of the things that I didn't know what to do with, I put on the curb, and sure enough, within 24 hours, they were gone, because as we know, 1 month's trash is another man's treasure. And I think Christy is next.
Terrific. Can you hear me now? Great. Great. Thank you. Thank you, Barbara. I think that's this dovetails in with saving money. Some of the same organizations that we can donate items from our home to, we can also then go look there for things that we actually need. So I love the idea of Restore, is what you mentioned most recently, that for not only donating things to, but it's another way to save money by shopping from there versus going to a Home Depot or something like that to see if you can to find things in your renovation, your remodeling, and you're also benefiting the organization that they support and the families and the homes that they're building as well through Habitat for Humanity. So we'll talk a little bit more about that as I get deeper into this. But on the first page here, some of this, what we want to talk about is going back even to that pre-cycling, is buying less. Less is a clear way to save money. So stopping to think about, do you really need it? And if you buy it, you know, what are you generating through that purchase in terms of additional garbage or recycling, in terms of even just the packaging of what you're buying is an impact to the environment. So if we can take a moment as we're purchasing things and relook at our budget and relook at, is it something we really need? It can help just to reduce overall burden on the environment. An interesting point is when you're thinking about what you're purchasing, inexpensive things often need to be replaced more frequently, right? They're not built maybe as durably. So if you are going to purchase something, it may make sense to make a either a long-term investment in something more durable or well-made. My husband is always encouraging our sons to say, you know, when you have something, you take good care of it so it lasts a long time. And so just caring for what we have is a really important concept to consider. And buying good quality items that would have a longer life is a worthwhile investment as well. And again, the more we have, the more we have to maintain. And that is something that can induce stress, anxiety. It certainly takes a lot of time from out of our lives just to maintain the things that we own. So I love some of the concepts that Barbara spoke about for decluttering and not replacing some of the things that we're getting rid of. Just being able to have more space around us is really a healthy habit as well. So, and again, repairing instead of replacing. This is an interesting concept, especially as we come through the COVID timeline. There is, you know, worldwide distribution channel or disruption at this point. And so it's sometimes harder to procure something new than it used to be, right? We used to be able to just order off Amazon certain things or go to a local store and buy them. And now instead it sometimes takes 2 or 3 months to order some things that we might have been accustomed to having it delivered the next week, right? So it starts to when you can't get a sofa, for example, for 12 months or 12 weeks instead of next week, it makes you start to look at your current sofa a little differently and say, maybe I can make this work, right? Maybe I can recover it versus, you know, buying a brand new sofa. Maybe I can get these shoes repaired, you know, at the shoe shop in town, as opposed to buying brand new boots this season, right? It just needs a new heel. And maybe you look at, again, repairing something versus buying something brand new and making something last for 2 to 3 years that normally you might replace every year. So just some considerations, because they do have such ripple effects. Everything we buy has a ripple effect throughout the world in terms of supply chain, how much demand for things to be created next year. We maybe are creating waste, for example, by buying something that we don't really need. So it's just a consideration to say, let's look at the items we already own and place a higher degree of value on them than maybe we have in the past. And this is interesting data point, 84% of clothing ends up in landfills or incinerators. And that's kind of shocking when you think about that. And there's some companies that we know of now, like Eileen Fisher and others, that are actually inviting their customers to bring clothing back, and they will be recycled and made into, you know, upcycled and made into new clothing for purchase. So start to investigate those vendors and see if you can work with them, especially in the areas of clothing and things that can be upcycled. Those are responsible providers in that way. And I think, you know, again, I mentioned on the previous slide, but if we can, less we buy, the less, you know, new things will be created. 2,700 liters of water to make 1 cotton shirt. And you start to think about how many cotton shirts do we really need then, right? Can I take better care of what I have? And another thing, well, again, this was covered a little bit. We're talking about clothing. On Barbara's slide was that in town we have Renew, which is a nonprofit ministry to refugee women, but they will also take some donation of clothing or fabrics. So consider that. There's also many resale shops in town that instead of just throwing clothes away, go and try to donate those clothes to, for example, their Stars resale shop. We all know that there's Goodwill locally. There is, and there's a handful of others in town, but if you research them, they would be glad to have the clothing that can be sold there. But there's also some higher end resale shops that you can buy from. So again, another consideration is if you can find something that already exists and reuse it, that would be a huge benefit on the environment. And this, we're talking a little about a handful of things. I'll dwell on a few bullet points a little bit more than the others, but talking about what we use and what we buy. if we can, again, buy glass jars instead of plastic, those are infinitely reusable in our homes, right? They don't always have to be used for the same purpose either. They become actually an asset, a reusable asset in our home. So consider, if you're buying something, what it's packaged in, and could you look around your home and find something else, a new use for an existing item. Today, for example, I found a basket that I had been storing some things for winter in, and I repurposed it to be able to use for some blankets for winter. So rather than going and buying a new plastic bin to store some of these things, just repurpose something that I had in my home. So consider that also, just in terms of reusables, right? Water bottles or shopping bags, right? For a while during the COVID timeline, the reusable shopping bags weren't welcome in stores, but we're back to the point that they are welcomed. So get in the habit of having those in your car again, bring them into your grocery shopping, and use those reusable shopping bags, even to take them into clothing stores, right? And decline the paper bag. If you are buying something new, just have them put in a reusable bag for you. And just look at your own habits of your family and say, what are some of the things, what's the volume that's going into my recycling bin? Are there a lot of things you're putting in there that maybe you could change your buying habits and actually cut down on the number of things that have to be recycled from your home? Same thing for your garbage. What's going into your garbage? Could you make different purchases? Could you maybe buy a larger container of a certain type of food so you wouldn't have individual items being thrown away in the garbage every day? And see if you can reduce the overall volume of both your garbage and your recycling that's being produced out of your own home. And I want to spend another minute, I guess, on the resale shops, recycle, buy nothing groups, to tell you a little bit of a story and anecdote if we have time. But I recently, over the past few years, have been working with a nonprofit school that is renovated. It's a small school in Wheaton. We renovated an existing building, which was also kind of, in a sense, giving a new life to an existing structure, which we loved doing rather than building something new. And but then we got to the point that most of our budget was spent on the actual renovation process. But we did recycle or reuse as much as we could. So we sourced building materials where we could to be able to put into the building process. But then we got to the point of needing to furnish a building when we didn't really own, for rooms that we had never had before in the school. And we built a budget of what it would cost to buy things new. And even being conservative, it would have been close to maybe $100,000 for this school. And instead, we started to look on places like Facebook Marketplace to say, where could we buy existing? Somebody else is getting rid of something, can we buy it from there? We looked at local resale shops. So Jubilee Furniture Store on North Avenue, which they in turn, their proceeds actually help underprivileged families in the community. So we wanted to benefit them as much as we could with our purchases. The Stars Resale Shop, again, supports a disability program locally. So we wanted to benefit them if we could buy from them. And we looked at a handful of others, but we were able to buy all the furniture that we needed for that segment of the program for 10% of its new value. And first of all, did not require all that furniture to be created. And so there was no burden on the environment in terms of creating that new furniture. But we also were able to take that, in a sense, out of circulation, keep it from a landfill, and actually give it new life in the school. So it was really exciting to see that process. One of them and that was relevant, I guess, to any of us, not just for a school, but for our homes. Many of the things we were buying were chairs for lounge areas, right? Tables for meeting purposes. We also just outfitted the science lab and we sourced cabinets from somebody's kitchen. So if you're considering remodeling your kitchen or your bathroom or a laundry area, don't go buy new first. Instead, spend a week or two and look at Facebook Marketplace or places like that are even restore, as Barbara mentioned. And we were able to, again, find cabinets that were salvaged for about 10% of their new value. They were ready that week, not 3 months from now. And with that, the family threw in a granite countertop and a sink and a faucet. So it was an incredible value for that program. They were pleased to have us come and take those cabinets and everything out for them. It saved them money in the renovation they were doing for us to deinstall that. So just think about, again, how can we help each other as a community? So if we reuse something, it actually does help the person that is seeking to get rid of it and move on to something else. But it also can benefit us. And especially in today's world, you start to be incented actually to do that, to reuse, because your timeline, it can be available tomorrow versus months from now. So it's one of the benefits of the world we're living in today. And it just takes a little bit of effort. It does take some hunting, right? So instead of hunting and designing something new, maybe you're hunting and finding something existing to work for you. So just an encouragement to do that. I would really encourage you, again, if you walk into a resale shop, ask them their story, find out why they exist, because many of them do exist so that their profits can help a different program in the community. And then you can become great partners together in terms of what you're donating to them, what you're buying from them, to help them in their mission as well. And you'll find that's a really rewarding partnership, kind of back to the whole volunteering. And then the Glen Ellyn Public Library, incredible resource. Again, before you buy a book, maybe you can check it out, right? Maybe you can find other ones that you'd be interested in, but they also have an amazing library of things. So resources that you can, co-share, like museum passes for a discount, but spend some time looking at the resources they have. Again, it's not just about books, but it's about a community of resources as well. So thank you.
All right. So we just.
And then Jacqueline, do you want to go back to doing it, to covering this?
Yeah. So we just shared a whole ton of information.
I think you might still be on mute.
Oh, am I still on mute? Unmute. Can you hear me now? Yeah, okay. So we just shared a whole ton of information out and probably overwhelmed you with lots of ideas. So now is we're going to talk about how to keep some of these resolutions, how to incorporate some of these healthy habits. So the first thing I'll say is to start small. Pick one thing. I think we probably just gave you 50 different examples of things that you could do. So pick one, and I would say make it manageable. So if you're a big meat eater, I wouldn't necessarily recommend that you decide to go vegan full stop starting tomorrow. Maybe pick, that you're going to try a Meatless Monday, or you're going to try eating, a vegetable dish or something like that. But pick one thing and start there. And then as you, achieve that and start to feel comfortable, then you can build upon that habit and incorporate other ones. Second, these are all like very common. I'm sure you've heard them. They're not, necessarily specific to environmental habits, but be specific. So when you're specific in your goals, it helps your brain to figure out what it is that you have to do to accomplish that goal. So instead of saying something like, I'm going to spend more time outside in nature, say something more specific like, I'm going to do a 20-minute walk around Lake Ellyn once a week. That's very clear, and that's more achievable than just spending more time. Another thing you can do is to write it down. And there's a very commonly, I was looking this up, there's a common cited statistic that people who write down their goals are 42% more likely to accomplish them. So for that reason alone, write it down. But something like, I want to volunteer. Again, you could be specific and say like, I want to volunteer with, the Conservation Foundation or the Park District in 2022. And then it's real fun to come back in December and look at the goals that you wrote down and see how you did. And then of course, the most fun is to have a friend or family member join you. So that's especially great for the volunteering or, any of the activities that we talked about, but always more fun to do it with someone else. All right, so it looks like we have a couple questions. I'm going to stop sharing my screen. Oh, no, it was no questions. It's just apparently the fact that I was on, on mute. So we do have about 5 minutes left for questions. If people do have any questions, you can feel free to drop them in now.
Can I ask a quick question?
Sure.
Then I wrote some down earlier. So did you say you did vegetarian January? Or was
Yes.
it?
Yeah, we did vegetarian. We were going to do dry January, but it was in the middle of the, the pandemic, and my husband said, "You're the only person I can hang out with, so we can't not have wine because our date nights are on the couch." So yeah, we did a vegetarian January. We did it for the month, and I think we even ended up extending it into February. So I think it's not like necessarily a thing, but there are tons of resources out there. I think there's a cookbook, Love and Lemons. They had a ton of good recipes, and I think she's got a website. So yeah,
That's awesome. And I liked what you said about like meat as a garnish. I think that's a great way to think about portions, right, in a different way. So I thought that was really interesting. Have you thought, just on the vegetarian side, have you done any growing of your own, or are you have you launched into that yet?
So I did not in the winter, but in the spring and summer, in the typical growing season, I did have a garden for the last couple of years. But this past year, I actually joined a CSA, which is community supported agriculture. So for people on the call who might not be familiar, this is an opportunity to buy your vegetables and fruit sometimes from a local farm. So I participated in one called Angelic Organics. So it was from a local farm here, but there's a number of CSAs that you could join, and you don't have to go to the farm to pick it up. I think there's one Nichols farm that they do pick up at Marche, but it's really awesome because we get a newsletter each week from the farmer that talked about like what was growing and some of the challenges that the farmer was facing, and obviously those veggies are coming straight from the ground, like right to your door. So really could not be fresher than that. And that was another way we learned about a bunch of different vegetables like kohlrabi and acorn squash and things that I don't normally buy at the store, but they're in the box. So get to experiment a little bit with cooking.
That's awesome.
Thank you, Jacqueline, for shouting out the library. And I just wanted to mention we're doing a lot of environmental programs, especially in April for Earth Day. And one of them is our recycling drive that we do every year with Scarce. So we'll be collecting crayons and bread tags all during the month of April. So I know it's a few months away, but start saving those and bring them into the library. The bread tags are melted down and made into wheelchairs for those in need. And the crayons are also melted down and reused. So it's a good cause.
Wow, that's awesome.
And I don't see any questions coming in.
Can I ask one more question? Sorry, this is maybe a leading question too, but just to go into it a little further, is composting. And there was a note about composting reduces methane emissions, right? So can you expound on that just briefly and just give us like in what way can we be make a difference through composting?
Yeah, so when your garbage is breaking down inside the bag, it creates methane, which is it's a greenhouse gas that I don't know what the number is, but it's much more powerful than carbon dioxide. And methane emissions are at an all-time high right now, like a lot of our emissions. So by composting and it's produced by the breakdown of the organic matter inside the bag. So by composting instead, and what happens, whether you do it at your house or whether you do the curbside composting, is all those organic items like, the food scraps, basically anything that was ever living that's composted. Instead, it breaks down organically into compost material, and then that's used to be added back to soil for, you can put it in your garden. I mean, farmers use it and stuff as well. So it's not only is taking stuff out of the landfill and reducing the emissions, but then it's adding nutrients back into the soil. So it's hugely beneficial to the environment. And the curbside composting is very easy to sign up for on the Glen Ellyn website. It takes about 60 seconds. So if you go to again, that same web page I mentioned earlier, scroll down and look for the blue button. You'll find information about where to sign up for curbside composting.
Great, thank you. Thanks.
Okay.
Thank you, Brenna. Thank you, Glen Ellyn Public Library, for making this program available. I think, and I just want to also say thank you so much to Jacqueline for putting a lot of this content together, for envisioning the messages that were really important to hear, I think, and they're easy things to do. It just is creating new habits for us, and it will make us healthier in our own homes, but also our whole community can be impacted. So Jacqueline, thank you for spearheading these messages. I really appreciate it. Barbara, thank you for your thoughtfulness too in putting this together.
Absolutely. Thank you, everyone. I think we're going to call it a night, and thanks everyone for joining us as well.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Bye.